What's going on, everybody in Celtics Nation? It's been a busy week. The boys are in the building for a three-man weave. We got to put a bow on this Celtics Nuggets game. And then it's the midseason point. And the only way for us to really take a look at the midseason, we're going to pass the rock. It's a three-man weave episode. Let's get it going. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. It is a three-man weave edition today. As always, this is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? And of course, joining me today to complete the three-man weave, first up, we have my best friend, co-host of the podcast, the coach of the podcast, the one and only Greg Manakis. How you doing today, man?
I'm good, brother. I'm good. Ready to discuss why it's time to fire Joe Mazzulla. I'm kidding.
Hot takes are a coming. Maybe we'll get some Stephen A. Smith levels in here. I don't know. Earmuffs just in case we do.
Bitch.
Wow.
And of course, rounding out the three-man weave today, we have our podcast and cousin from across the pond, the lead writer for Celtics blog and the leader of the Taylor gang. We got Adam Taylor in the building. What's poppin', Adam?
What's popping? That's how you do it when you do my accent, right?
What's popping?
Popping?
That's the best I got, man. I mean, it's I need to work on it. I think honestly, so I'm gonna be in Europe in November. I'm gonna try and pop over to England at some point. If I'm around it more, I think I can get it a little bit better. But I gotta be in the element, in the moment to go ahead and lock that in. But fellas,
You say you're coming to England?
Maybe I'm gonna be in Ireland in November for a wedding. So popping over to England. It's on the table, so we'll have to try and connect and see what happens. But fellas, it's been a hell of a week. It's been a hell of a weekend. Friday night, Celtics Nuggets, massive tilt. We haven't had a chance to talk about it. So today, I think we got to put a bow on this. Got to get our thoughts out. And then I want to make sure that we hit it's the midway point, fellas. Let's just reflect just for a quick second here. It's the midway point. The Celtics are 32-10. We're past that 50% mark in the season right now. And I'm going to be real with y'all. I don't know how we got here so quickly. Like, I feel like this happened quicker than, even though I was waiting for the last couple of weeks for us to get to the midway point, it still came quicker than I realized. You know, how do you guys feel about being more than 50% done with the season at this point?
I feel great, man. Celtics are in a pole position to, I think we talked about this. So Adam, Will, and I watched the Nuggets game together in person the other day, which was great. And we were just talking about the Celtics and this team as currently constructed, right? When they brought in Porzingis, they brought in Holiday, they went from being a title contender to a title favorite, and nothing has changed the way that I feel about this team. But even the loss to the Nuggets, the loss to the Thunder, loss to the T-Wolves, all those like big losses that we've had, I really still don't feel any different about this team. I think we're in a really good position.
Yeah, I mean, how can you be upset? I said before we even come on air, the team lost its 10th game in the middle of January. Like, the Pistons are losing 10 games in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and we're out here like, no, they lost their 10th game, and it's like the halfway. Like, you're on pace for like a 60+ win season, and how can we not feel good?
Yeah, we're one of five simultaneous Celtics podcasts that are all sounding the alarms right now as we all gather to discuss what happened. As Jason Tatum said, they don't lose very often. So when they do, it feels worse than it actually is. But let's put a bow on this game, and then let's talk about the halfway point. But before we do that, if we're going to pass the rock, you know what we got to do.
You guys ready? What's the plan, Bobby? We're winging it, Jerry.
Yeah! I got the rock now! I got this motherfucker now! What?
Easily my favorite part of that is, what's the plan, Bobby? We're winging it, Jerry. I don't know why, but I do it in a very Seinfeldian act like tone in my head. We're winging it, Jerry. Like that. I don't know. And it's not what's happening, but it just goes off my head every time. And it makes me laugh. But it's a Sunday edition, three-man weave, passing the rock. Let's start with the Celtics Nuggets game. And Greg, I know there's a direct place that you want to go, so I'm gonna pass the rock to you here first to get us going.
Well, for everyone that's tuning in live, right? They saw the title. Did Joe Mazzulla blow it against the Nuggets? So we have to talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's get into it. So setting the scene, the last 450, right? That's when the Celtics, I think they scored 2 points over the last 450 or something like that. Maybe it's 4 points over the last 450. Points, yeah. 4 points over the last 450.
2 of 10 from the field, 0 of 2 from the line.
Right. So the Celtics are on a 7-0 run coming into that stretch. Last 3 buckets. They run the horns, ghost flare for White. He hits a 3 off that V cut, Adam, that you posted about. The Tatum floater through contact where he probably gets fouled. He goes right at KCP. KCP goes flying. Tatum was like really physical in that game. He got fouled. KCP goes flying out of the way, not in legal guard position. Tatum finishes through the contact. And then we run the great play to get Jalen the post up on Murray. You can argue whether or not that was a foul in the post. As we saw later, maybe it doesn't matter because Jalen will probably miss the free throw in that situation. Or maybe they call that foul and Jalen has a rhythm at the free throw line and he makes the last 2. Who knows? Right. So that's the scene coming into the last 450. So I would love to kind of just go through the plays that happen. We don't have the visual here. NBA.com is kind of being a bitch right now, not letting us watch the
NBA,
clips.
You bitch.
Cue the Stephen A. Smith music.
Yeah, we should actually clip that up and just have that built in here. But that's
no, we definitely should. Okay, so first play that the Celtics run. We'll just go through the Celtics offensive plays just for time's sake. So the first play, Tatum misses the layup, right? He goes one-on-one, goes strong to his right hand. Actually, they go high pick and roll. So the first thing that the Celtics do in the last 450, if we're talking about execution and what we're trying to do, they go high pick and roll to involve Jokic. They go high pick and roll. Tatum gets to his right hand. He gets blocked by the rim. So he does that little Euro step, ends up having a wide open layup, really, and he just gets blocked by the rim. It's a good play, in my opinion. I'm chalking that up to good execution. Tatum just misses the bucket. It's a play that he finishes 99% of the time. The next play, they run the same action. Involve Jokic in the high pick and roll. Tatum makes a great read. Al Horford wide open for a 3-point shot. Misses the 3-point shot. I think that's a pretty good play. I think it was a great read by Tatum. It was a rhythm shot by Al. The only thing to think about there, when you go back and rewatch that play, when Horford gets the ball, Aaron Gordon is in the corner on Jaylen Brown, and he stunts at Al Horford to stay with Jalen. Right. So that kind of shows you the difference between a KP pick and pop and a Horford pick and pop. If that's KP, Gordon's probably trying to run him off the line. Maybe there's an extra pass to Jalen in the corner. Who knows? Right. But just in terms of like the way that the Celtics offense functions with Horford in that role versus KP, interesting to think about. 2 for 2. I think those are great plays, great execution. Next play. They go away from involving Jokic. They go to the horns flare action that they ran that I mentioned, right? The horns flare that White hit the 3-pointer. They run the exact same action. I think they just flip it. So that's a pet action that they love to go to. They get Tatum at the nail in a mismatch, and he settles for the jumper. That's the jumper that he shoots off the glass, and he kind of falls down, right? So 3 for 3. I think they run plays, and they run them well. They execute well. It's just missed shots. 3 missed shots. So if we're talking about Joe Mazzulla blowing it against the Nuggets, I don't see anything to say that Joe Mazzulla blew it against the Nuggets. The next play, they decide to get Jalen into the action. They go high pick and roll. Nuggets defend it well. They reset on a boomerang. Jalen gets past Michael Porter Jr., getting to his left hand, gets fouled. This is where Jalen misses those 2 free throws, right? So let's put a pin in the Jalen missing free throws for a little bit later when we talk about Mazzulla. Holiday subs in at this point. That's when we get the Porzingis offensive rebound. Jalen wide open 3, back rim, straight as an arrow, just back rimmed it. Derek White wide open 3, back rim. Both makeable shots, or maybe he front rimmed that one. Both very makeable shots, wide open. At this point, the Celtics now have 7 shot attempts in a row that are good shots. So let's just pause there. At this point in the game, I think the Celtics are down 2 when Jalen misses those 2 free throws. I think it was to tie the game or maybe to bring it within 1. How are we feeling as Celtics Nation about the way that we're executing down the stretch? I saw all these pundits talk about Celtics late game execution still sloppy. Kevin O'Connor, looking at you.
I mean, for me, it's not so much the execution. As you said, they're getting good shots. They're running actions to get into those shots. It's the shot selection. Like, and what I mean by this is understanding where you are and how the flow of the game's been going. So when you look at a shot analytically, I know that a lot of math people will tell you that every shot is its own entity. I don't really subscribe to that because I don't fully subscribe to you can explain everything with math. Sometimes there's just a feel. Sometimes shots are falling, sometimes they're not. And if you've gone all the way through the game struggling to hit from deep, don't try and close out a game with a bunch of threes because it hasn't been working for you to this point. The odds of that momentum shifting into your favor in crunch time against the current champions they're quite low. Instead, I would have been like, right, create good quality looks, but create them in an area where you're having success, which in this game was at the rim and a little bit in the mid-range. They only took 12 mid-range shots in this game, but that was kind of my biggest, like, that bugbear, that ground my gears a little bit. Like, hey, there was a play a bit earlier in the game where Horford pulled down like 3 or 4 offensive rebounds in a sequence, and it was rebound free,
I feel like that
rebound
twice, actually.
free, rebound free. Like, dude, rebound, screen drive. You know what I mean? You've just took 2 threes. Horford, he's old, man. Eventually, he's gonna get tired. Just fucking finish the play. So I think that's my biggest like gripe at the moment is, yeah, okay, I get it. You're creating high quality shots, but then you're not having much situational awareness with how the game's gone for you to this point.
I feel you, but I think my pushback on that would be the first play is a layup, right? The second play is the 3-pointer for Al, right? But it's wide open at the top. In my opinion, I think maybe they run like that empty corner dribble handoff there, you know, with Jalen coming up when Al gets the ball at the top, they flow into a dribble handoff because it's wide open. There's no one covering Horford, so that creates an advantage for Jalen. And then it's at the nail, so mid-range jumper at the nail. I probably want Tatum attacking in there, right, instead of settling for that jump shot. And then Jalen gets to the line, 2 free throws, right? So there's 1 3-pointer of the plays that they run, and then on the offensive rebound they shoot 2 threes, which is, you know, a good shot off the offensive rebound, a step in, walk in 3. To your point, Adam, they did have like 5 of those on one possession earlier in the game,
and it's like I completely understand where you're coming from because there's balance there. As you said, you have your mid-range, you have a layup, you have a 3, and then you have some free throws, and then you have another 2 threes. But when you start to quantify this, it's like 66% of your shots in this clutch stretch, as we've got to so far. I've done that math quite quickly. I didn't count them properly. Have come from deep. And my argument is, well, the 2 threes you took back to back to end where we are at this point, where we're talking up to, you probably had enough time on the clock to work a better shot. Cut, national drive, come under the rim, come back around, wait for a secondary cutter, hit him. If you need to kick it out then when the entire defense is collapsed, then you can take your time to really get set, fine. But if there's an open layup, take it. I just think that I've got no problem with the amount of threes they shoot as a team. I really don't.
So I think the last part that you said to me is the only thing that, and some of this is, you know, 2020 perspective, being able to look back and you know, and see it with a clearer eye is the timing aspect, right? Because the one thing I wrote with like the even going a step further back than where we're talking, that Al missed 3 where he's wide open, and Greg, you pointed out, you know, the difference between Al catching the ball and KP catching the ball and the reaction to the defense is that it was pretty early in the shot clock, right? And so that was the only thing where it's like, yes, that was definitely a good shot, no problems with it. You know, Al was 2 of 4 at that point, I think, shooting threes that night. Like, I trust Al's a 40+% 3-point shooter. I don't have a problem with that shot. It's that early in the shot clock. Could you get an even better look? You know what I mean? Or is there another option? So that's the only thing that I wrote down. And I think in the sequence that we've looked at so far, you know, Jaylen Brown just being completely off from the field, just missing 2 free throws, and then immediately being the first 3-point shot right after that. That's probably the biggest gripe that I would have with is that one we could have probably, you know, looked to get, you know, especially because in that situation, it's a bit of a scramble coming off an offensive rebound. That's not the easiest. And I'd have to go back and look at the tape to see if there were any cross matches that all of a sudden might have presented itself if we had just taken a beat and been able to get a better look. But that is a great scenario where that could be a potential, and there could have been a better look. But ultimately, they're mostly open threes. But I think, Adam, that's the one point that I would look at sometimes is that, are these the best shots? They're not bad shots. Like, I don't think there's any bad shots that they really got late in this game that I really have an issue with, even looking, down at some of the shots that we haven't got to yet. I don't really think there was any that I would say were bad shots. It's just, were they the best shots is really the question I would look at.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. That's why I was like kind of bringing up Horford flowing into that dribble handoff with Jalen. I think with so much time left on the shot clock, I think that would have been a great opportunity to get Jalen kind of like curling off that dribble handoff into the mid range and attacking from there. Okay. So the Celtics are down 3 at this point. The Nuggets on the other end are executing as well. They're also just missing shots. They get Jokic at the nail and hammer
real quick, Greg,
Porter.
Just to add to that, Denver scored 1 point in the final 2:46 of this game. So just like speaking to the point of Denver also struggling to execute, and the Celtics playing pretty solid defense. There was a couple open shots that the Nuggets just missed dreadfully, but
that's what I'm saying. So like they're executing as well, but they're also missing shots.
Right.
So like Gordon airballed a 3, Porter missed a wide open 3. Porzingis blocked Jokic on one play. But okay, next play, Tatum comes up the court, gets downhill, going to his left, dunk at the rim. Very easy play. I think that right there kind of shows like the mindset that we want. Tatum getting downhill, dunking on people, because it was there the whole game. Like he could get to the rim kind of whenever he wanted. Next play, we're hunting Porter. So Tatum calls up a couple different people to try to get a mismatch. This is something that we could talk about matchup hunting if you want, but Tatum ends up getting Porter on him, drives to his right. White is wide open in the corner. Tatum makes a great read, pass to Derek White, who's been clutch all year. He just had a 3-point shot to kind of like lock in on the distance, misses the shot from the corner. I don't think you can complain about Derek White having a wide open corner 3. To me, that's a great shot.
Yeah.
At this point,
real quick, just to throw this in here, because we're talking about this also is going to circle back to Joe Mazzulla on that Derek White miss. I think this is the part that I don't understand how it hasn't been brought up. That was the KP crashing the board, and then getting the foul call. And for the life of me, I don't know I feel like it hasn't been talked about enough. I don't understand the no challenge there. We have 2 timeouts at this point. It's really befuddling to me. And Greg and I were hanging out yesterday, and I was kind of saying, I feel like Joe likes having as a crutch those 2 timeouts, which he then eventually did use with under 20 seconds left or whatever it was on that final possession. But he didn't want to, because it was kind of in between, but I think it was such a big moment, and there's a real case that shouldn't have been a foul call on Kristaps, that it should have been a good time to utilize that challenge. I think that's been very frustrating for me, that's an area for Mazzulla that I would say, definitely got to at least worth a challenge there if he got the 2 timeouts, which he did.
I always look at things like this as when it happened in real time and I'm sitting there expecting the challenge and it doesn't come. My mind kind of goes to, well, did he get information? Because they have access to their own read
for sure
plays pretty quickly. And I'm like,
what's the Green Lantern's name? What's his name? Matt Reynolds or whatever is looking at it in real time.
Yeah. So in my head, it's they don't think they'll win that challenge. And then I'm like, okay, cool, you move on. But you do make a good point. We come back to this rigidity, right? Or is that the right word? Rigidity. Where we start thinking about Mazzulla in terms of being willing to kind of stray from his kind of like system. And he's been very, very fluid all year, but the timeouts are still an issue at certain points. And it definitely felt like, for me, you do that challenge even if you don't think you're going to win, because 1, it just slows down the clock, so you got time to reset, you can draw something up, there's a lot you can do in that time, and 2, if you do win, then you're killing it.
And also, I mean, the challenge is an issue, but the foul on Porzingis, like, oh my god, those refs in that game were pretty brutal. The tech on Tatum for dunking on the rim, that's a whole other episode that I want to talk about. Like, why does the NBA even care about that as a technical foul? But when Porzingis gets the rebound, the most frustrating thing to me, because I think the Celtics are down 1 at this point, maybe down 2 at this point. He has a wide open layup. He gets that rebound, 1 dribble and he probably dunks on Aaron Gordon. So like that to me is one of the most frustrating things, is the refs kind of took that opportunity away from the Celtics. Take away Mazzulla's challenge. Like, they shouldn't have called that foul, and that's a dunk. And now the Celtics, the feel of the last 5 minutes of that game is very different because Porzingis flies in for an offensive rebound. We're praising him for his instincts there. We're praising him for his stick-to-itiveness and go-get-itiveness, and he goes and dunks the ball on Aaron Gordon, right? So that really frustrated me. But that's coming off that wide open Derek White 3-pointer. You know, I think you trust, and this is something that Mazzulla said at the end of the game. He's like, I trust Jason Tatum. I trust my best player to make plays. And that's what he did. You know, throughout the last 5 minutes, he put the ball in Tatum's hands and he expected him to make plays. Okay. Next play. And I want to talk about this for a second. So this is the Aaron Gordon airball 3. Tatum gets the rebound. And if you go back and rewatch it, I want you to watch everybody else on the court for the Celtics besides Jason Tatum, because at this point in the game, the Celtics were very slow and deliberate in the way that they were running their offense in the last 5 minutes. And this is something that we hadn't seen. And Adam and I talked about on the last crunch time that we did versus the Timberwolves, where they were those early pitch aheads. Everybody was flying up the court in crunch time and nobody runs with Tatum. It's Tatum 1-on-4. And the only person who even makes it past half court is Derek White. Everybody else is just jogging up the court. I don't know if it's because they're tired in this game and it was such an intense game, or they were expecting Tatum to walk it up because that's how we had run the offense for the last 4 minutes. And they weren't conditioned in that moment to get out and run. So that's just something I want to bring up right there. And I want to pause right there is did you have an issue with Tatum pushing it 1-on-3? And 2, do you think the way that they were running their offense down the stretch contributed to the guys not running with Tatum?
I have no issue with him running and pushing in transition. I have an issue with him not being willing to kind of escape dribble out of a drive if he feels like it's not going to be a good quality shot, right? Because you've pushed it in transition. You've got 3 guys now that are all challenging you. You've done what you needed to do. You've collapsed them. There's 3 guys in the paint. Eventually, reinforcements are going to arrive, whether they're pushing or whether they're coming up slowly. There's going to be a 4-on-2 mismatch because you've got 2 defenders still making their way back. You've absorbed 3 defenders and you've got 4 dudes. Openings are going to be there. Escape dribble out, go to the post, look for an opportunity, kick it out to a secondary drive. I understand why you don't do that. I understand that Tatum had some success in this game, pushing the ball, driving the rim. He probably feels very confident about his ability to finish through contact. And maybe it was a little, I think he said he feels like he released the ball a little bit too quickly on that one. So I don't have an issue with it. But again, it comes down to timing. It comes down to shot quality. Why take the first shot when you can get a better second or third opportunity? And again, look, we're splitting hairs. I mean, it's the 10th loss of the season, man. They've been excellent all year. So this is just in a vacuum for one possession. I'm not saying this is an issue with Tatum, like in a broader sense.
And he kind of stumbled into a good shot, right? Like that wasn't the prettiest, you know.
Yeah, you could argue. I watched it back in slow motion. It looked like KCP raked him across the arm.
Okay, so there might have been a missed foul call as well in there. I'm kind of in the same boat as Adam. Like I wouldn't have been either way, whether he continued to push it or if he were to like escape dribble, like you said, Adam, and reset. I think either of those would have been a fine call. So I don't have too much on that. But Greg, as you were talking, I was kind of going through and actually counting. You were like, I don't know if everybody's just tired from the game. Like the Celtics have had a really weird schedule lately, right? And we saw obviously that Bucks loss. We were just like schedule loss, whatever. We're exhausted. I mean, they're still on a stretch of 9 games in 15 days as of when that Nuggets game was. And coming up, they've got a back-to-back in Texas, and then they get 2 days off. So like this has been a very jam-packed month for the Celtics. And so when you think about, this was a playoff game, right? This is one of those few regular season games that you look at and you go, that was different. Right. The Minnesota game felt different. The game in OKC felt different. Right. There's certain games that we're going to look back and say these 8 to 10 games, these are the games that I look to as like this was the prep for the playoffs. And that was one of those games. So I think it could have been kind of a culmination of those things. So I kind of fall on I don't have an issue with Jason Tatum taking that shot. I think whether or not there was a foul call that was missed, he was lucky to get the shot that he did, and it was makeable. At the end of the day, it was a makeable shot that Jason Tatum, who I think is a superstar, that he can make. So you live with that every day.
For sure. Okay, so now we're in the last play of the game. They go There's a jump ball. Jokic baits the guys into.
First of all, I've never seen that before. I've never seen a player attempt to do that, and I kind of respected it when I saw the replay because I was like, damn, Jokic just did like this. Like, Jokic is such an insane player. Greg and I were trying to explain to our fiancés, like, that guy. I swear to God, that guy's the best player in the NBA, like by a mile right now. And they're like, that guy who looks tired and is slow. Like that human right there with the giant like scrapes on his arm. We're like, with the giant red nose. Yep, that's him. He's the best player in the NBA. And dude, when they did the replay and showed Jokic do this like fake stunt at the line, and he somehow doesn't cross the line, I was like, that's pretty fucking genius by Jokic. Like I was very impressed, even though it's so frustrating that like what are we calling lane violations for at that point? Like,
yeah,
it happens all the time. That's just
beautiful, though.
Yeah, it was.
I've never seen it before. That was a great play.
He's not bothered with the NBA stick. Really pisses me off, though. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, you're living a dream that like 2-3 billion people want, and you're just like, yeah, whatever. Let me get onto my horses. Fuck you, dude.
Nikola
Jokic, not for Adam Taylor.
Cue the Stephen A. Smith clips. Okay, so there's a jump ball at half court. Tatum ends up with the loose ball, and he flies off to his left, right, looking to attack the rim. They call timeout. So at this point, what they end up doing, they call timeout and they try to get Jaylen Brown in a switch. So the first action they run, there's been a lot of talk about, should Jason Tatum continue to get all of the late game opportunities? Should we involve other people in those late game actions? That's one of the tweets that I keep saying from like 20 different counts. I don't know if it's the same person, 20 different burners that have an anti-Tatum agenda, but people are talking about, should Jason Tatum continue to get those shots? Well, the first play that they ran is an action to get Jaylen Brown in a switch onto Jamal Murray, the same place that he got where he got the layup 5 minutes ago, right? That was the last bucket the Celtics had scored coming into the last 450 of this game, is they had Jaylen Brown on Jamal Murray. They run an action to try and get Jaylen Brown switched on Jamal Murray. From what I saw, Jrue Holiday doesn't set the right screen. So if you watch Jaylen coming across, because I think Aaron Gordon ends up staying on Jaylen Brown, Murray is on Holiday, and Holiday should have set a screen to create a switch so that Jaylen gets the ball on Murray. That's what I think the play was. And I don't think Holiday ended up setting that screen. So I think that's on Jrue Holiday, or maybe it's on Jaylen for going too soon. I'm not really sure who that would be on. Because if you go back and rewatch the play, if Jrue tries to set a screen in that moment, it's probably a moving screen, right? So I think he ended up just hoping that like a brush screen action just being in the way would cause that switch.
Get a soft switch out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think in that moment, you got to be physical. Jaylen maybe pause for a half second. We get Murray on JB, and maybe that's, barbecue chicken, easy money in the post. But Gordon ends up being able to stay on Jaylen Brown. So when Jaylen Brown gets the ball isolated on the right block against Gordon, that is not a mismatch. I actually really liked that JB didn't force it against Aaron Gordon. I thought that was great situational awareness by JB to recognize, oh, I don't have Jamal Murray on me. I have one of the best wing defenders in the league on me. I can't bully Aaron Gordon in the post. So he takes a hard dribble to his right. I love that he got into the paint. If you watch in that moment, Kristaps Porzingis is spaced out to the three-point line. And when JB gets into the middle of the paint, he takes a step or two in, I think, because he thought Jaylen was going to go up for a mid-range shot and he was going to try and fly in for an offensive rebound. But JB had that situational awareness and he was looking for the kick out to Porzingis. But because Porzingis had initially stepped inside the three-point line, he has to then backtrack outside the three-point line. And that shows you the level of execution that you need and the speed in the NBA, because it's Jokic who's recovering out to Porzingis. And that one false step that Porzingis takes is enough for Jokic to recover out to Porzingis and take away that three-point shot. That one false step, that split second is all Jokic, that guy, the fat guy with the red nose. All he needed to get out to the three-point line. Who likes horses?
The horse guy. Yeah.
The horse guy.
He's able to get out to the three-point line. But if Porzingis just stays put, that's a perfect pass from JB. That's a rhythm shot. That's a three-pointer that maybe Porzingis hits, right? So those little moments are the moments that are the difference between winning and losing in the game. And then we can talk about the last play, but I want to pause there to get your guys' thoughts on that play.
Yeah, I mean, the Porzingis part I think is so important, right? Because like you said, well, let's start with JB actually, because JB, great recognition. Like you said, they were trying to get back to the last time, other than the Tatum dunk, the last time they scored was that JB on Jamal Murray post up, right? So that's what they're trying to get back to. And when they don't have it, like you said, JB, great recognition. And when I rewatched the game the next morning, so Saturday morning, the Porzingis awkward or just miscommunication on him taking those few steps in, that's what throws everything off. And then they end up in this, I'm not sure what to do. They get the ball to Holiday. Eventually, Mazzulla uses one of those 2 timeouts, which, like you said, we'll get to that in here in a second. But that's Mazzulla leaning on having those extra timeouts. And I think one of the big talking points after the game was that KP, I think, only had 2 shots in the second half after being, so efficient, especially to start the game. He was a monster to start the game. But in that first half, overall, just had such a great first half. But I think a lot of times when he got the ball in the second half, he just got fouled. Right. So either got free throws or it was a sideline out of bounds. And I think on this particular play, this is the one where when they look at the tape, it's easily correctable. And that's kind of the theme for me with everything that happened in those last 4 or 5 minutes, is that either we got good looks or it's little things that are pretty easy to correct, that with more, not necessarily experience, but just more practice, that becomes something where Porzingis is like, okay, I'm realizing that it's not Jamal Murray that he has, so he's not going to go up for that shot. It's Aaron Gordon. And I know that, we got the bro connection here, the broskies. Like, he's going to find me if I stay out here because Jokic can't recover in time to get to me, and I'm going to have a look for 3. So that was really key when you look at this last sequence, is that Porzingis kind of, going to crash versus staying out wide for that 3. I think that would have made all the difference. And who knows if he hits the shot, but this was a night where Porzingis had it going.
It's a really good example of the small margin of error, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that when you watch it the first time, and Greg, me and you spoke about this last week, you pick up 40, maybe 55% of what's happening during a possession. Second watch, you probably get to about 80%. Third, probably 90. And then, 4, 5, 6, it's incremental to get everything. Like, so much happens on every possession. So many little nuances, like Kristaps Porzingis taking 1 step in. You wouldn't notice that if you were just watching live, because you're so focused on, like, depending on how you watch the game, you're either focused on the on-ball stuff or the off-ball stuff. And when you're focused on the off-ball stuff, you're focusing on 4 other dudes and 4 other dudes. You're focusing on 8 people. You know what I'm saying? So it's really easy to miss these little caveats of, oh, shit, he took a step. Oh, shit, now he took a second one. Now he's got to get back out while you've got Jokic recovering. That killed that pass. The cut wasn't quick enough. They didn't sprint on the cut, so the play was dead before it began. And then you end up in this, like, those little moments stack on top of each other, and it ends up being stuck in the mud. And I think that when that happens, the Celtics don't always react the best because, shit, we've tried 2 or 3 things and we're exactly where we were. But now there's only 5, 6 seconds on the clock. So I think that, rather than looking at it and being like, oh man, this was bad process, this was bad kind of execution, it wasn't. It was just Porzingis was doing the job that he's told to do. He was getting ready to crash the boards. It just happened that him and JB weren't on the same page at that one very specific moment in time. And these guys have been playing together for 41 games. You're not going to be 100% on the same page all the time. So I can live with that. To be honest with you, like, I can live with that if that's what cost you the game as well. Like, I'm okay with that because that's something you go back, you watch film, you learn from, you have a discussion, you figure out how you both want to kind of operate in those situations. Again, you learn from it, you move on. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and in the title of this for everyone watching live, right? Did Joe Mazzulla blow it against the Denver Nuggets? That's not. I haven't seen anything here in these instances that say it was Joe Mazzulla's fault or he didn't drop a good play. I think that was a good play design. It just didn't end up working out. As we said, Holiday doesn't set a good screen. We don't get the mismatch. JB has good recognition, good situational awareness. There's that split second miscommunication between him and Porzingis. And then Mazzulla, I thought, did a good job and called a timeout. Now, Jokic was going to give a foul, right? So it's like, I think people overreacted in the moment. Like, Mazzulla, why are you calling a timeout? They were fouling. It's like, yeah, but there's 4 seconds left on the clock.
You can't assume that.
You can't assume that.
Look ahead to the Tatum possession here in just a second. right? Where he talked about after the game, he thought they were going to foul, so he put up a shot earlier than he really needed to. So, this is kind of the other side of my complaint. The one complaint I'd had of Mazzulla this entire, last 450 was the not challenging of the KP foul call. This is the other side of that. He still would have had one timeout, but he wouldn't have had, the 2 timeouts to be able to get the Celtics set up for this final possession, which, obviously didn't work out, but he now has those multiple options, which he may not have had if he had challenged and lost.
Yeah, and then the last play, they run a little cross screen action to get Tatum, like maybe a little wedge screen action to get Tatum on the other side. And I think when I go back and watch that last play, I think it's Porzingis who sets the screen, so they involve Jokic in that little cross screen action. Maybe you try and get Jamal Murray in there like we just did with JB. Maybe it's just for Tatum instead of for JB, and they have it so that Jokic is the person, whereas Tatum's coming across the screen. He put the body on him, takes away his clean lane to the ball, and then Tatum, we can talk about that last shot if you want. He said that he thought he was going to get fouled, so maybe you force the foul, go into KCP, and maybe you get 2 free throws out of it. It's just like as Mazzulla said, you trust Tatum in those moments, but in terms of the play design, maybe you don't involve Jokic, or maybe you're trying to get Jokic on Tatum, maybe that's what they're hoping. So I didn't really have an issue with that last play. And there's been a lot of time. I saw somebody tweet out today. I don't know who it was, but when you're scrolling through Twitter and you see like, oh, I wish we had Paul Pierce so that he can get his elbow step away jump shot. It's like, yeah, but you had the ball in the hands of your best player, and you let your best player make a decision. That's what you want at the end of a game.
Do you know what's so funny about that, Greg? And I feel like I've seen similar takes, but then also those same people are going to say we play too much ISO ball. That's all we did with Paul Pierce was ISO at the end of the game. So the same people calling for the Paul Pierce at the elbow, like that's an ISO. Like I don't understand how you're saying the Celtics ISO too much late, and then your counter is like the Celtics that you love, which we all love, was just Paul Pierce at the elbow over and over again. Like it doesn't make it make sense.
And it's not like you're giving the ball to your best player who's a top 50 guy in the NBA. You're giving it to a guy that's top 6, top 7, top 5, however, like he's top 10. Like, oh, the ball's in the hands of one of the 10 best players on the planet, and you're asking him to make a decision when he's arguably one of the best decision makers on your team, if not in the conference, maybe the league. Like, let live with it. Like, you're not going to win every game, and I get it. Tatum's missed a couple of game-winning opportunities this season, and everyone he doesn't drain is just going to keep building on this narrative of he's not that clutch guy. He doesn't have that clutch gene. And then the day when he does decide to go and drain a game winner, it's just going to be, whoa, he's only made one. Like, dude, just be happy.
Yeah, and then the people that are, oh, why aren't we running the offense through Derek White? Why isn't Derek White getting opportunities in crunch time? We just talked about how Derek White missed 2 wide open threes. So it's not like the ball is just not in Derek White's hands. Maybe you go high pick and roll with Derek White if that's what you want to see. But in terms of like, oh, Derek White didn't have opportunities. He had opportunities, and he's one of the best spot up shooters in the game, right? Derek White is a good pick and roll player, but he does have limitations where if he gets a switch on someone, it's not like he has a bag to go to. Right, Derek White has like a couple of moves that he can get to, and one of the moves is just like a pull up 3, So like it's a Derek White pull up 3 versus a Jason Tatum post up, Like,
I think I'm gonna lean to JT. Yeah,
and JT's got the size, he's got the length, the strength. He's like he can bully his way when he needs to. He's really good at creating separation off that bump before he does the turn away.
There's more optionality when you go to JT
like
someone.
And
like
you could say the same for Jaylen Brown. Everyone said like why didn't Jaylen Brown get many touches? Well, the dude was really struggling, and I want to say that with capital letters in bold with full stops in between each letter. Struggling, like it was bad. So that's why you don't go to Jaylen Brown. The same reason I said you be situationally aware. He's not having a good game. Why on earth are we going to be like, dude, we know it's been bad for you. We know that you're struggling right now, but just go and take the last shot of the game, and we believe in you.
And also, we just saw Jaylen Brown miss 2 free throws in crunch time. So like that's one of the big reasons why certain people don't get the ball in crunch time is because they're not trusted to make free throws when it matters. And like, that's the biggest argument I see against Jaylen Brown having more opportunities. Because if he gets fouled, if we're down, I'm not feeling great about Jaylen Brown hitting those free throws. I think most people would be lying to you if they said, no, Jalen's going to knock him down. Yeah. I literally said when Jaylen Brown went to the free throw line, as Will and I were sitting next to each other on the couch, I was like, think Jalen's good for these? And like when he missed the first one, Will was like, he's not making the second one. There's no chance.
Yeah, I tried to speak it into existence that we were getting 1 out of 2. And we both knew like the ways that he was going to miss. He's going to be short and then he was going to be long, or, like we knew. And then as soon as he missed the first, I was like, yeah, there's no chance the second one is going in. I think I said the first one, but it's going to hit the rim and the backboard 3 different times.
Yeah.
Like that was my prediction for how we were going to make one. But I mean, like, to your point, Greg, that's like, you look at, you look at the Bucks, like they have Giannis, who's arguably one of the top 3 guys. They don't really want to go to him late in the game for the exact reason that you're talking about with the free throw shooting. And that's why for them, it was imperative that even with the shift from defense to offensive mindset, like go get a guy like Dame. And, Dame's not had a typical, although Dame just dropped 45 points last night. Dame's not had necessarily a typical Dame season. His clutch numbers it's on the Pistons still, but his clutch numbers are off the charts, right? Because that's still where you want Dame to be the one with the ball in his hands, even though Giannis is clearly the superior of the 2 players. But I want to bring this back to Mazzulla before we just kind of recognize we're at the midway point here, at the back end of this podcast. But after the game, so this game was obviously on ESPN, nationally televised game. It's partly why we can't give you guys any clips right now for those of you watching on YouTube. But, Kendrick Perkins, old friend Perk, was up to, spouting off a little bit here. And the main quote that came out when he was describing Joe Mazzulla after the game, if you take his brain and put it in a bird, the bird is going to start flying backwards. So my question for you guys, and I'm sure you guys heard the full clip that goes into this and the reaction from those in the studio, in the ESPN studio, who I do not think were on board with Perk's comment. Was Perk out of pocket here? What do you think, Adam?
It's hard, right? Okay, so first of all, I want to contextualize this. There was a whole quote he gave, and it was very much there's 2 versions of Joe Mazzulla. Yeah. He gave him some flowers in the very first part, and then he did him real dirty in the second part, right? Personally, I'm not really vibing with what Perk said. Like, I'm like, yo, this dude's lost 10 games all season and it's mid-January. I'm going to keep saying the same shit. Like,
20-1 at home. Just throwing that out there.
You know what I'm saying? So if that bird's flying backwards, he's doing it better than any other backwards flying bird out there. That's all I'm saying.
he's moonwalking like Michael Jackson.
Yeah, dude. I'm like, nah, that weren't for me, man. I get it. He's probably a bit annoyed. Didn't like the process, some of the processes. And look, man, I'm probably the only one that's ever going to say this like now, but I respect Perk, NBA champion. He clearly has a certain degree of kind of what he expects from the Celtics. I'm okay with that, but I just think that was a little bit out of pocket.
Dude, I mean, the whole Perk thing, and I haven't seen him much on NBC Boston this year. Have you guys? Is he just like not affiliated?
I think Mazzulla just kind of be like,
yeah, I feel like I haven't seen it. I was thinking that earlier because I've always said over the last couple of years, there's ESPN Perk and then there's NBC Sports Boston Perk. And ESPN exactly. Perk is the hot take Perk. Listen, this is the part of me where I'm like, the more he talks about lemon pepper chicken wings when people score points, and he talks about, birds flying backwards and just saying crazy stuff and eating pizza on the set and, doing all this like Perk stuff. Like, part of that is it's like wrestling, right? Like he's entertaining. He's trying to continue to get that ESPN check. So I'm like, dude, I kind of get it. Like, you got to play up, you got to be that performative. But I've always said that. And then NBC Sports Boss, I think you get a little bit more just like real Perk, but also slightly more balanced, even though he's on the Celtic network, which typically leans more biased. But I think you actually get a better version of Perk on NBC Sports Boston than you do with this ESPN entertainment version.
And I've never been subjected to NBC Sports Boston Perk. I don't have access, so I only see ESPN Perk.
Only see the ESPN Perk. Yeah, I don't love the ESPN Perk.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to anybody who's been on ESPN and they talk about like you have to pick a lane, like you have producers in your ear telling you to do something. Like when we go on Bleacher Report, they kind of tell us like what the general topics are, and we kind of have to pick a lane a little bit. We can still be ourselves, but there's like at least 5% to 10% where we're like, hey, this is what they told us to talk about. You know what I mean? So like on ESPN, that's probably that to the nth degree, and Perk has to go ahead and do that. So I don't personally have an issue with that. because like that's his job and he's trying to make money and provide for his family and all that. So like I don't really knock him. Anything Perk says on ESPN, I just chalk it up to that's ESPN Perk. I don't think he actually believes all of this stuff. I think if you sat him down and just had a candid conversation with him, he would be like, yeah, it's like, that's my job on ESPN, is like, I kind of got to say crazy shit.
Yeah, just Perk being Perk on ESPN at this point. But just wanted to bring that up. But I think that I think we've covered the Celtics Nuggets. Honestly, will be an unreal finals matchup. So hopefully we get to see that all play out one day. But we talked about at the beginning of the podcast. We're halfway through the season, guys.
Go ahead, Adam. You got something?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask if anyone saw the Joe Mazzulla quote about Gary Washburn when Tatum smoked a layup.
About how Gary always asks him for more shots at the rim.
Gary wants us to shoot more. I thought,
dude, this is and like on the Mazzulla, like I made it. Every single post game was talking about Mazzulla being a robot for half the season last year. I appreciate getting like a way more authentic Mazzulla. It's definitely. Even if I still wouldn't, I'm still not putting him in the top 5-8 coaches in the league. Like I think he's definitely improved, but I think it's made me far more accepting of Joe Mazzulla, getting a chance to see him be more authentic and be just a real human being. So I appreciate the Joe Mazzulla we've seen.
If Mazzulla gets to the point where he's not the reason we're losing games and we can be like, it was the players didn't play well, then I think that's a win for the organization with Mazzulla. Obviously it would be a loss overall if we just lost the games.
Yeah, but I understand the point that you're making. But so we're at the halfway point. So here's what I want to do to finish out this podcast. I want us each to think of halfway through one thing that we feel like from the beginning of the season that we've gotten right so far, and maybe one thing that we've gotten wrong. It doesn't all have to be Celtic related. It can be grander NBA related as well. But I'll start us off here to give you guys a second to think. So one thing that I think I've gotten right so far is we kind of talked about what's something that we want to plant our flag on at the beginning of the year. And one of the things I said is that Sam Hauser will be a mainstay of this rotation. And, Sam Hauser was still last year. It blows my mind that I think he played in 79 games or 80 games last year. But it was always kind of a question, like, is he going to be enough? And I think he's answered that question full throttle this year. He is 100% a guy that they can look to. And it's not just the shooting, right? Like he's scoring, 8.2 points per game. He's shooting 5.5 threes at 41%. That's kind of what we need. And I've been begging for a true floor spacer to give you gravity night in and night out. Even if he's 0 for 3, no one's looking at Sam Hauser like, oh, I can leave off Sam Hauser. They know it takes one shot, and all of a sudden, this guy's going to have 3 shots in a row that just don't even touch the net, go straight through, right? So I think he's done that, but I think it's even, we talk a lot about him holding up as a white boy, holding up on defensive battles when he gets attacked. He's done a great job of that. And I think my favorite part about Sam Hauser is the nights that he crashes the boards from the weak side. And, right now he's just over 3.5 rebounds in 21 minutes per game. That's pretty solid from Sam Hauser. And the nights that you get him where he actually helps an extra possession be maintained or is crashing the glass from that weak side, that honestly sometimes even makes me more excited about how Sam Hauser can contribute to the Celtics rotation beyond just being that 3-point shooter. And so far, I feel like Sam Hauser has certainly established himself as when we get the playoff time, he's in those top 7-8 guys. There's no question about it. You will see Sam Hauser on the court.
Yeah. My only concern with Sam is like, as we go deeper into the playoffs, how short does that leash get? Right. And if the leash is like, you kind of got to hit your first shot. And if you don't hit your first shot, then you're coming off the court. Then that's the issue, right? I think Sam has proven himself to be an NBA rotation player in the regular season. I think he's going to continue to get those minutes into the playoffs. But when it comes, I said this about Peyton Pritchard, like, is Peyton Pritchard going to be able to play in a game 7 on the road? I don't know that that's the case. Sam Hauser, I don't know that that's the case with Sam Hauser, because like the coaches are going to go to the guys that they truly, truly trust. And maybe there's a moment where they're like, I got to put Sam in the game. Just if we're not hitting 3-pointers, I want to see if he can swing the momentum. But is he going to be a guy that's worth having on the court for 5 minutes when you could just add 5 minutes between the J's? You know what I mean? Like that's one of those questions that you got to ask yourself. But I think with Sam, the thing that I really appreciate with Sam is like when I play basketball in my dreams, in the way that I'm like able to like dunk and soar and fly in my dreams. and I'm able to shoot 3-pointers from like half court and it just like goes in, and it goes in a way that's like almost surreal. That's the way that Sam Hauser, when he's hitting 3-pointers, that's the way that it goes through the basket, where it like doesn't even touch the net. You're like, that's a glitch. How does that even go? How does it even go in like that? He shoots these freaking moon balls. And I'm like, that's how I play basketball in my dreams.
That line just literally took me out for a good 15. Like when I play basketball in my dreams, like what? I'm sorry, I didn't expect it. It wasn't that it was a silly line. It just caught me off guard. Look, I'm all for dreamy Sam Hauser. Like no, jokes aside, I'm down for Sam Hauser. I do admit, like, there are times where you question how long that leash is going to be. I think his ability to play some defense really makes sure that he's going to have a decent sized leash. There's also not much depth behind him that can come in and do what he does on both sides of the floor. So these there, obviously, in my opinion, are more injury insurance than or like Hauser's just happened. His shot's not falling today.
Yeah, we can try on the court when it matters, and something went seriously wrong.
Yeah, you fucked it. But for me, that kind of gives you a little bit of a longer leash, just because you are the best catch and shoot guy on the team. You're the best movement shooter on the team. You could defend a little bit, and you've added some off ball cutting into your game as well. Like, I'm cool with Sam Hauser. I like Hauser Island. It's a nice place to be.
Yeah. And then quickly, something I got wrong at the beginning of the season here is I totally thought that with JT and JB, their scoring outputs were going to stay about that 30-28 mark for them, for each of them respectively. The sacrifices that they've made with obviously the Derek White ascension as well, and the way that this team has been so selfless. If you had told me that this was going to be the case before the season started, I would have said, I see there could be some issues. You know, Jalen just got that big contract. For him to go from 27 points per game, just about to 23 points per game, that's a tough ask when you just give a guy this boatload of money. Jason Tatum's been on the precipice of being an MVP, went from 5th to 4th, first team all NBA. You know, the next step is usually the guy goes from 30 to 32, 33 and wins the MVP. And instead he's sacrificing to go from 30 to 27. Right. So I think the selflessness of this team was something that I didn't necessarily get wrong, but I underrated how much they'd all buy into saying, let's get this done, and do so at the sacrifice of our statistics. And part of that was me just thinking of how much respect I have for the way that Jalen and Jason can score the basketball. But seeing now this all play out over half a season, like even they know like what we had to do and how many 30 for 30 games we had to have in the past. Like, it's great when we can still do that, but it's not night to night. Like, this is imperative that we try to get that as our goal. It can happen. It doesn't have to be, night to night. So I think the selflessness of this team was something that I wasn't prepared for, and they've been amazing about it.
Adam, what are the things that you got right and you got wrong? Give us one thing you got right, one thing you got wrong.
Put me on the spot. I get a lot of things wrong. I rarely ever get things right. What did I get right? That Peyton Pritchard was going to be able to make an impact as the first guard off the bench, right? I mean, it started off slow. It struggled, worked his way into it a little bit more now. I feel like I'm very confident that even if Pritchard's shot's not falling, he's going to be able to make an impact somewhere. Hustles his ass on D, gets into the ball, gets underneath guys, cuts really well, like finds opening lanes. I just think screens really well as a small screener. I think
watching that TJ McConnell tape.
And Ime was a big influence on that as well. I remember multiple press conferences where Ime was like, yo, Peyton needs to improve as a small screener if he wants more minutes. So, yeah, that was probably what I got right. What did I get wrong? Just being adamant that we were going to see a lot more zone. I know we've seen flashes recently. But coming into the season, I was like, yo, we're going to see zone every game. It might only be a minute here and there or a possession here and there. But we didn't really. We saw that like 2-1-2 press, that like the 2-2,
which we haven't seen a lot lately.
No, they've gone to that 2-1-2 zone, that 2-1-2 spy. But overall, like, coming in, I was expecting that zone was going to be a significant part of their defensive system. I was completely wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong because they've got, what is it, a top 4 defense in the NBA right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I'm happy.
And, going along with that zone, although they haven't played it quite as much as I think we were all expecting, I think that it does seem to be a key adjustment that they're willing to make. So although the frequency isn't there, I think that they're relying on it against certain matchups, specifically against guys that do work in high pick and roll that can dominate you in the mid range. It didn't work against Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray was on a heater, but those are the types of guys that they're running it against. Because when you have Drew Holiday playing that spy position in the middle, the whole point of having him there is to take away that mid range so that he can just, as a gap defender, just get onto the ball handler so he takes away the midi, right? And I think not putting the pressure of a full drop defense on your entire defense is really important against guys like that. I think this will be important against the Philadelphia 76ers as well. You know, the way that they're able to just live off the two-man game with Embiid and Maxey. Now the question is, are you going to be able to run that with Embiid on the court? Probably not, because then you can just put Embiid on the nail against Holiday and cause problems from there. But the Celtics were running it a lot when Jokic wasn't on the court. They were trying to take it. They were trying to be like, okay, Jamal Murray is going to do damage. If we take away Jamal Murray, then the Nuggets don't really have anything. So they went to that zone, in my opinion, to try and mitigate what Murray can do. Murray was just on one of those games. The best players sometimes play like the best players in the world, and that's what Jamal Murray did in that game. What they ended up doing down the stretch, which was cool, is they put JB on Murray and said, hey, JB, just go be a dog and take him out. Murray didn't really do anything the last 6 minutes of the game. He was super hot. Maybe he was tired at that point, but I was actually really impressed with the way that JB took the challenge down the stretch to kind of put that fire out, which we didn't talk anything about the Celtics defense today on this pod. We just focused on the offense, but there were a lot of great moments on defense, a lot of iffy moments on defense down the stretch where the Nuggets just missed shots. But in terms of Adam's point about what he got wrong with the zone, I like what I've seen. I like that Mazzulla is going to these curveballs that he talked about in the preseason.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be fun to see how he decides, like how this develops as we get towards the tail end of the season, like hit the playoff stretch, and then we start to feel like, all right, here's what we know that we've got in the bag. Here's these 3-4 different options, and then we start to see how we're utilizing it, and just the willingness to, even when it doesn't work, you know, for a possession or two out of 4 possessions, to not just abandon and say, all right, we got to get out of this. This is where the rigidity, it is a tough word to say, Adam. This is where that actually comes in as a positive to say, no, I said that we need to find other options. We're going to experiment and try these other options, and I'm going to stick with it and know that, like, yeah, it may cost us a possession or two here, but come June or come May, it might win us a possession, and that's the possession that's the one that we care about. So I appreciate that. Greg, let's go to you here to round us out and send us home.
I'm going to expand it out to a more NBA wide conversation. Okay. At the beginning of the year, we were talking about the teams that we thought would, with the over-unders would be over their mark or under their mark. I was pretty adamant that the Golden State Warriors were going to be trashed this year. I didn't think anything of the Golden State Warriors, and I want to just give myself some flowers for predicting the demise of the Golden State Warriors. I said that draft pick that we ended up trading was going to be a lottery pick, and it looks like it's going to be a lottery pick this year. The Warriors, thoughts with their organization losing their coach, that's super sad news. But like, to me, that's just more evident. Like, this just not the season in Golden State. Like, it seems like they probably need to break everything up. I would probably imagine a Draymond Green trade happening if anybody was going to go ahead and take that problem. I expect Draymond Green to get moved by the deadline. That's kind of what I'm seeing. I know Andrew Wiggins is going to get moved. There's no way that they keep Andrew Wiggins unless they're like, you know what? If we somehow make it to the finals, the Celtics are probably going to be there, and Wiggins at least plays good against them. You know what I mean? Doesn't play good against anybody else. So the demise of the Golden State Warriors is something that I got right.
Are you happy about getting it right?
Yeah, man, I'm sick of the Warriors. I'm so sick of them, dude. It still kills me that we lost in the finals to them. I think we were the better team. Steph just ascended to this whole new level, and Andrew Wiggins, as I said, played better than Tatum and Brown in 7 games. He was on his Caleb Martin shit.
It's dark magic. I don't know how else to explain it.
Well, this is what you get then. The dark magic comes back, and now that it's, this is what they get.
To be fair, that title, just from a legacy standpoint of the Warriors era and the Steph era, was so massive for them to get one after KD left.
Yeah.
And to have like, hey, listen, we did it before you were here. We did it after you left. Like, it amplified the Warriors dynasty 4 and 5 out of 8 years, whatever it was. Like, that It's so crazy to think about how much that amplified Steph's legacy and the Warriors' legacy, Steve Kerr's legacy. And they just had to do it against the Celtics, didn't they?
Dude, 10 years from now, we're all going to be sitting in barbershops. Maybe not me. Well, yeah, because I'll be living in America. If it ain't in America in 10 years, something went wrong. And we're just going to be talking about how fucking good that dynasty was and how the Celtics just weren't ready from an experience standpoint and how much it sucks because that would have been their first of the 5 that they're going to win.
Here's the thing. I don't even think it was experience. Well, part of it's experience because the Warriors had so much of it versus the Celtics. But I still think it was just they ran out of gas, man. Ime ran that team as he had to get them to the finals. That team got run into the ground with like a 7-man rotation from January to June. Like Ime cut that shit short, which like I said, I'm not even faulting him because he had to once everything went haywire against the Knicks that night in January, and then they made the trade for Derek White. It became a 7. Maybe Daniel Tice would sneak in as an 8-man rotation, but it was a really tight rotation for almost 6 months. And that team just had nothing left after Curry ripped their hearts out in game 4. That was the nail in the coffin.
All right. And the thing that I got wrong, I'm going to stick NBA wide. I thought, and I still don't know if it's going to continue, but I thought the Dallas Mavericks were going to be absolute garbage this year.
I was on that take with you.
Yeah,
doesn't look
they've been better than I expected. Every time I tune into them, though, I still am just like this Luka ball doesn't seem like it's sustainable. They don't look like a happy team, like ever. You know, like you see Luka's out, and then Kyrie and Tim Hardaway Jr. go for a 40 for 40 night, and then Luka comes back and they score like 20 points combined. You know, like when Luka has the ball in his hands for 48 minutes. It's just like, I don't think it's sustainable for them to win basketball games and to win at a high level. Grant Williams has, from all I've seen, Mavericks Twitter is so done with Grant Williams. They're just like, get this guy off of our fucking team.
They loved him the first month, then it's gone downhill since.
But what I said when I first saw Grant play with Luka, I was like, oh, Grant's not going to thrive in this situation. This is not a good Grant Williams situation right now. He's not going to be able to just like stand around and watch Luka do shit with the ball for 20 out of 24 seconds and then have to shoot a late clock 3. Like, that's just not good for anybody. I didn't think it was good for Grant Williams. So the Grant part of it, I think I got right, but the team-wide success and where their record is at right now, I got wrong. And I would be that's a team I'm interested to see down the stretch to see if the winning percentage stays at the level that it's at right now and how quickly they flame out in the playoffs if they make it.
So at this point in the show, most people watching have gone, so I can say this and feel comfortable not knowing that we're not going to get cooked too much. Would you class Luka as the biggest hypothetical star in the league? And what I mean by hypothetical is on paper, it makes a lot of sense that he's a superstar and that he could win a championship. But in reality, just his play style and how difficult it is to construct a contending team around that style of play, he could be that guy that, you know, ends up being like the Joe Mazzulla type guy, the Carmelo Anthony type guy that was like this generational talent but doesn't win.
That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, that's a good one. I mean, I've kind of thought about this as well too. It feels a little James Harden in Houston, right? Like, clearly, like I would have a hard time not calling Luka a superstar because as you were talking, Greg, in my head, I'm just like, I guess even if I don't like watching the Mavericks or think that the setup of their team is great, if Luka's out there, I just got to pencil him in for 45 to 50 wins, right? That's just kind of where we're at. But Adam, I don't think your point is wrong either. And I think it's too early to tell. He's still in what, year 5, 6, and he's, you know, been all NBA 4
6 now, right?
Yeah, and he's been first team all NBA 4 or 5 out of those years, right? So I think it's too, and he's on a different level than even Melo, who's great. Like Luka's on a different level, superstar wise. But I do think that we're hitting that point, and that's where sometimes my frustration lies, kind of back to a part of a conversation we were talking about with Tatum earlier, where I feel like Tatum has these moments in the playoffs that you can look to. Not that Luka doesn't, but Tatum has them in the second round and in the conference finals, like where you're just like, look at what this guy's done, but everyone's like, Luka could do it. Embiid could do it. Well, you know what? They haven't fucking done it, right?
Well,
like they haven't done it.
Here's
hypotheticals.
Here's a question with Luka though. Is like you switch him and Tatum right now. You put Tatum on the Mavs and you put Luka on the Celtics. Do you think Luka is able to like get rid of his ego and play within what the Celtics have? Does Luka make the Celtics better, or does he just drive everybody insane because he's just going high pick and roll for 20 out of 24 seconds? Like, I don't think he could come into the Celtics team and make us significantly better. I really don't, because he doesn't play defense, and that's the issue of building around a one-side superstar. You know, Luka Doncic is, I think everybody would admit, is a trash defender. You know, he's transcendent on the offensive end, and I think that he makes up for a lot of his defensive inefficiencies. He can make up for it because he's so efficient on the offensive end. But in terms of the like what winning basketball is and championship level basketball is, I don't think Luka Doncic, that style, I don't think is fit for a deep run in the playoffs. And I don't think the Mavs look happy, man. Like, I really don't.
I mean, I think
would you say he's
is he willing to adapt? If he has more talent around him, is he willing to adapt?
Well, he's had talent around him. He's had second stars next to him multiple times now. And it's the same issue over and over again. The last thing I'll ask is, and that hypothetical thing was something I read on NBA Reddit a day or two ago, and I thought it was a really interesting question. Yeah. Like, is Luka a hypothetical champion, or could he actually be a champion? The last one I'll end with, and this is me making it up just to really annoy anyone that's left, is Luka Doncic a Super Saiyan version of Trae Young?
Dude, so when I was saying the one side superstar, I almost said he's like Trae Young, except he's 6'8" and like kind of thick, versus Trae Young, who's like 5'11" and is blown in the wind. To me, I think the better comparison of just like a bigger version of Trae Young is LaMelo Ball. I think LaMelo Ball is just like a 6'6" Trae Young. I think Luka, I don't really know. I think he's a white James Harden.
I think that LaMelo will end up being a decent, like a passable defender, though. LaMelo tries.
He's 6'6" and he tries. Got long arms.
Yeah, I feel like Doncic don't try. Like it's the art of looking busy. You know, like how everyone who works in the office has that art.
It's the George Costanza.
You know what, Luke?
George Costanza. You gotta look frustrated, and then people will think you're busy all the time.
Yeah. Really, you just like fuck, it's everyone else's problem.
You know what Luka reminds me of on defense? So when I was a camp director for A Step Ahead basketball, shout out Deuce Tatum, with certain kids during drills, like we do defensive slides and we do like, you know, the whistle drills where everybody would be like foot firing, and then they have to like flip their hips one way, flip their hips the other way, get down on the ground, take a charge, all this stuff. Like Luka's the kid in the back of the camp that's like hoping none of the coaches are actually watching him because he's hiding in the back, and he's just like going through the motions. He's like not actually lifting his feet off the ground. He's just kind of moving his knees a little bit. And then one of the coaches comes up to him, and everybody in the camp has to run because Luka's not actually going through the drill. You know, Luka's the kid who's just like giving that fake hustle, going through the motions, acting like he's playing defense while not actually playing defense.
Well, you know what this conversation made me feel? Very appreciative that our superstar does play both sides of the ball, and that, to your point, Greg, I don't think it makes our team better. So I think that just makes us lucky to have the team that we have, and we got a full second half of the season left to cover. So there'll be a lot coming in here. All-star votes coming out here. I think starters are announced this week, reserves next week. So we'll have plenty of content as well as plenty of actual on-court basketball. Fun week coming up here for the Celtics, and they have a really long 7-game homestand that starts at the end of this upcoming week. But we'll be back with more coverage. We've got Texas two-step coming up the next couple of days off, and then Miami on Thursday, which will be a really fun game to cover. So we'll have different hits for you guys coming throughout. Make sure you're subscribing to us here on YouTube. We got a new membership opportunity. Make sure you guys are joining us there, as well as hitting us up in the Discord. But that's going to do it for this episode of Green with Envy. I'm your boy, Will Weir. We've got Adam Taylor. And then, Greg, any final thoughts before we hit him with some Black Sheep Optimists?
No final thoughts. Black Sheep Optimists. Get this high. Peace, everybody.
Peace, y'all.
Every time I get this high, I lose my mind. It don't take much no more until I hit the floor. Every time I get this high, it's you I find. It don't take much no more until I'm at your door. You cut me to my core, man. baby. What can I say? You got me on the floor, you know I came to play. I know I shouldn't, but you seem to take my pain away.